After they drained my college fund to pay for my sister, my parents suddenly begged me to come back home for Christmas. Okay, listen up. Imagine your parents, the people who are supposed to protect you, betraying you in the cruelest way possible, stealing your future to prop up your golden child sister. For 3 long years, I swore I'd never look back. But guess what? Their perfect world just crumbled, and now they're begging me to come home for Christmas. The audacity, right? My name's Dwayne, and I'm 24 now, carving out a pretty awesome life for myself at a tech startup in Seattle. Pretty wild for a guy whose parents literally drained his entire college fund for his sister's medical school. Huh? 3 years ago, I walked away from that family, a family that always put me second. I had nothing but a community college degree and this burning fire inside me. They said I couldn't do it without their help. But I did. I built a life they couldn't even imagine. And now? Now they want me back. I grew up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, in one of those cookie-cutter colonial houses. My dad, Robert, was a bank manager. My mom, Linda, a third-grade teacher. From the outside, we looked like the picture-perfect American family. Mom, Dad, my older sister Angela, and me. But inside those walls, things were anything but equal. Angela, 4 years older than me, was the son my parents revolved around. She was their golden child. Perfect hair, perfect grades, played violin, ran track. They beamed at her recitals and competitions, while I sat quietly, just a polite clap in the background. It wasn't that my parents were evil. They fed me, clothed me, came to my parent-teacher conferences, remembered my birthdays. But there was this constant, subtle imbalance. Angela always had the slightly bigger bedroom, the newer clothes, the overwhelming enthusiasm when her achievements were discussed. It was obvious to me, even if no one else saw it. My escape? Technology. When I was 7, my grandpa Joe gave me his old desktop. While other kids were outside playing, I was hunched over that old gateway, taking it apart, putting it back together, figuring out how it worked. It was my sanctuary, the one place I truly excelled, where I didn't need anyone's validation. You've got a special mind, Dwayne, Grandpa Joe would say during our weekend visits. Computers are the future, and you're going to be part of that. He was the one who saw me, who made me feel valued. When I won my first programming contest at 12, Grandpa Joe took me for ice cream. My parents? A distracted, "That's nice, honey," as they rushed off to Angela's violin recital. My grandparents had set up college funds for both of us when we were born, a hefty $85,000 each. Their way of making sure we could go to college without crushing debt. In high school, I poured everything into academics and tech, hoping, just hoping, it would finally earn me some recognition. I started the robotics club, won regional programming competitions, graduated with a perfect 4.0. MIT was my dream, and I got in. The acceptance letter from MIT was one of the happiest moments of my life. I remember staring at the email, printing it out to show my family. My mom glanced at it. "Isn't that school very expensive?" Dad added, "You know, state schools offer good computer programs, too." Later that night, they spent an hour on the phone, excitedly discussing Angela's medical school interviews. Grandpa Joe died during my junior year, Grandma just 6 months later. It was a brutal loss. They were my only true champions. At the funeral, my mom even remarked how proud they would have been of Angela pursuing medicine. I stood there, silent, mourning not just them, but the loss of the only people who had ever truly believed in my dreams. Looking back, the signs of their financial trouble were everywhere. Whispered arguments about credit cards, a second mortgage for a kitchen reno, waiting until payday. But I was 17, dreaming of MIT. I didn't see the iceberg until it hit. Angela, bless her academically gifted heart, wasn't immune to challenges. Organic chemistry nearly broke her. Expensive tutors were brought in. She switched majors to psychology, extending undergrad by a semester. My parents covered it all. No complaints. "Your sister is finding her path," they'd say when I'd question the extra study abroad semester in London. Education is the most important investment. Little did I know how those words would come back to haunt me. Senior year should have been a celebration. MIT was secured. I had great friends. Graduation was on the horizon. Instead, it was the year my world shattered. February. Angela got into Jefferson Medical College. Prestigious. Expensive. My parents threw a party, extended family, neighbors, the works. My mom even cried, toasting Dr. Winters. I was genuinely happy for Angela, despite our complicated history. But after that dinner, my parents changed. Hushed conversations. They'd stop when I walked in. My dad spent hours locked in his office, drowning in financial statements. My mom took on extra tutoring. Everything okay? I'd ask. Just adult stuff. Don't worry, they'd say. Then April came. A month before graduation. I walked in from robotics club, and there they were, sitting at the kitchen table. Grim. Determined. My stomach dropped. Dwayne, my dad began, his voice unnaturally calm. We need to talk about college. About your college fund. I slowly sat down. I already knew. My mom reached for my hand, then pulled back. Angela's medical school tuition is much higher than we anticipated, Dad continued. Even with scholarships, it's substantial. We've looked at every option, Mom added. We've even taken out additional loans ourselves, but it's not enough. Dad cleared his throat. We've had to make a difficult decision. We've borrowed from your college fund to cover Angela's first 2 years of medical school. Borrowed. The word hung in the air, heavy, suffocating. I stared, waiting for more. An explanation. A solution. Anything. How much? I finally managed, my voice sounding distant. They exchanged glances. 70,000, my father admitted. 70,000. Out of $85,000. Nearly 83% of my entire future gone. It's just a loan, Mom quickly added. We'll pay it back. Angela will too, once she's established. I laughed then. A sharp, bitter sound that made them flinch. When? In 10 years? 12? After her residency, after her loans, after she's established? I'm supposed to start college in 4 months. MIT offers excellent financial aid, Dad mumbled weakly. And there are student loans. The same loans you're protecting Angela from. I cut him off. The loans you always said would ruin our futures if we had to take them? Medicine is different, Mom insisted. The cost of education is just higher, and she'll be saving lives, Dwayne. This is her dream. And what about my dream? I asked, my voice cracking despite my efforts. Does that matter at all? The argument that followed was unlike anything we'd ever had. Years of suppressed anger and pain exploded. I confronted them about the lifetime of favoritism. Dad got defensive, then angry, swearing they'd treated us equally. Mom cried, repeating that she loved us both the same. But the money told a different story. Their actions screamed louder than any words. That weekend, Angela came home. I expected remorse, some recognition of the sacrifice they were forcing on me. Instead, she seemed annoyed by the tension. You can just go to state school, she said dismissively when I confronted her. Computer stuff doesn't really need fancy degrees anyway. Most tech billionaires dropped out. That's not the point. I tried to explain. That money was for my education. Grandpa and Grandma set it aside specifically for me. She rolled her eyes. They set aside money for both of us. And medical school is way more expensive than undergrad. It's just practical, Dwayne. Don't be so dramatic. That was it. That moment crystallized everything. It wasn't just my parents who saw me as less. Angela had internalized it, too. Her dreams would always take precedence. In the weeks that followed, I scrambled for alternatives to MIT. The remaining $15,000 wouldn't even cover a year at most four-year schools. Community college. It was my only viable option if I wanted to avoid crushing debt. When I told them I'd be attending Lancaster Community College, they seemed relieved, not disappointed. That's very practical, Dwayne, Dad said, patting my shoulder. You can transfer to a four-year school later. The subtext was clear. Unlike Angela's education, mine could wait. Mine could be compromised. Mine was simply less important. The night before graduation, I had one last conversation with them. I laid out how their decision made me feel. Not just the money, but the message it sent about my worth. For perhaps the first time, they seemed to truly hear me. Dad stared at his hands. Mom wiped away silent tears. We never meant to hurt you, she whispered when I finished. I know, I replied. That's what makes it worse. You didn't even consider that this would hurt me because you've never really considered me at all. That night, I made a decision. I'd accept the circumstances I couldn't change, but I would no longer accept being an afterthought. Something fundamental had broken, and I knew my path led far away from that house and the people in it. The day after graduation, I moved out, into a cramped apartment with two strangers. Jason, who worked night shifts at a hospital. Marcus, a music major who practiced drums at all hours. Peeling linoleum, persistent cooking oil smell. But the rent was cheap enough that I could afford it with my meager savings and a part-time job. I found work at Confrontation, a local computer repair shop. Ray, the gruff but fair owner, became a mentor. Pay was barely minimum wage, but the flexible hours allowed me to balance classes. More importantly, it gave me hands-on experience that would be invaluable. My life became a relentless machine. Mornings for classes, afternoons and evenings for work, late nights for studying. Sleep was a luxury. My diet was ramen and peanut butter. Meanwhile, through phone calls and social media, I glimpsed Angela's reality. A spacious Philadelphia apartment, paid for by my parents. When her laptop died, a new, high-end MacBook Pro appeared. That Christmas, they leased her a new Honda Civic because public transportation was unsafe for late-night study sessions. The contrast was brutal. While I counted pennies for laundry, Angela posted photos of weekend trips to NYC with her med school friends. While I pulled all-nighters to maintain my 4.0 GPA while working 40 hours a week, she complained about med school pressure, a pressure she faced without the burden of financial survival. My first Thanksgiving trip home was a mistake I never repeated. My mom had Angela's achievements laid out like the main course. Excellent grades, impressive professors, promising future. My community college experience? A charming side story, something to nod at before returning to the real success. Dwayne is doing the sensible thing, my father said, as if it was my choice, building a foundation before transferring. When I mentioned my dean's list and 4.0 GPA, my mom smiled. That's wonderful, honey, before immediately turning to Angela. Tell everyone about that special research opportunity your anatomy professor mentioned. I left early the next morning. I couldn't bear another minute of being invisible. But something unexpected happened. I started building a life that was entirely mine, free from the shadow of comparison that had defined my childhood. Ray, my boss, recognized something in me my family never had, potential that had nothing to do with my sister. You've got good instincts, he told me after I fixed a tricky motherboard. Better than half the certified techs I've hired. Keep developing that, and you can write your own ticket anywhere. At community college, I found passionate professors who knew my name. Professor Martinez stayed late to help me develop an app idea. Professor Whitaker connected me with local entrepreneurs, landing me my first freelance clients. I found friendship, too. Brandon, a fellow computer science student, became my lifeline. Family's overrated anyway, he told me after I finally shared my story. Mine kicked me out at 17 when I came out. Best thing that ever happened. Found my real family after that. People who choose to love you, not just the ones assigned by genetics. His words stuck with me. If he could rebuild his sense of belonging, so could I. We supported each other through everything. Therapy became essential. Free counseling at the college, Dr. Patel, helped me process the anger and grief. Your parents failed you, she said. That's a fact. But their failure doesn't define your worth or your future. Only you get to decide that. Those words became my mantra, taped to my bathroom mirror. By the end of my first year, I had a rhythm. The exhaustion never left, but it was the fatigue of building something meaningful. My freelance clients grew, giving me extra income to cut hours at Confrontation. My programming skills exploded. Social media glimpses of Angela's life, her white coat ceremony, spring break in Miami, the expensive watch from our parents, still stung. But I channeled that pain. It became fuel for late-night coding sessions and ambitious projects for my professional portfolio. When I made Dean's List for the third semester, I didn't tell my parents. I celebrated with Brandon, Ray, and my new chosen family. I didn't need their approval anymore. Their opinion of my worth was never accurate anyway. That truth led me far from Lancaster. 2 years flew by. Work, study, building skills, independence. As graduation from Lancaster Community College approached, I felt a complex mix of pride and lingering resentment that this wasn't the graduation I had once envisioned. Still, I invited my parents. A small part of me still craved their recognition, still hoped they might finally see me. They came, sitting stiffly as I walked across the stage, receiving my associate's degree in computer science with highest honors. Afterward, during the obligatory photos, my mom mentioned Angela would be finishing her second year of med school the following week. We're flying to Philadelphia to help her move to a nicer apartment closer to the hospital for her clinical rotations, she said. showing me pictures of a modern building with a doorman. The neighborhood is much safer, and the commute will be easier. I just nodded, that familiar knot tightening in my stomach. Sounds nice. We're so proud of how well she's doing, Dad added. Top quarter of her class. Angela herself arrived late to my graduation dinner, an hour-and-a-half drive from Philadelphia. A distracted hug. Then she launched into stories about her challenging neurology rotation. When the conversation finally turned to my plans, I mentioned the job offer from Technova, a growing startup in Seattle specializing in cloud security. Seattle? That's so far away, my mom said, frowning. Wouldn't it make more sense to look for something local? Your father's bank is hiring IT support staff. This is an actual development position, I explained. Building security protocols for enterprise clients. The salary is $75,000 to start, with stock options. Dad looked impressed, despite himself. But Angela just rolled her eyes. It's just a community college degree, Mom. I'm sure it's just basic tech support with a fancy title. That comment. It cracked something inside me. Actually, Angela, I said, my voice dangerously calm. They were more interested in my portfolio of actual work and skills than where my degree came from. Something you wouldn't understand, since you've never had to prove your worth beyond a piece of paper with your name on it. A silence. Uncomfortable. My mom cleared her throat. Dwayne, that's not fair. Your sister works very hard. So do I replied evenly. The difference is I've had to do it without financial support, without encouragement, and without anyone believing in me. We believe in you. Dad protested weakly. No, you tolerate me. There's a difference. The conversation crumbled. They defended their choices, minimized my feelings, just like always. Angela seemed genuinely bewildered by my anger, as if the inherent unfairness had never once occurred to her. The final blow came as we were paying the bill. Angela casually mentioned needing about $8,000 to relocate for residency interviews next year. Flights and hotels add up quickly, and I'll need appropriate clothes. Plus, I might need to put down deposits on apartments in multiple cities. Without hesitation, my father nodded. We'll figure it out. Maybe we can tap into the home equity line again. I stared at them. They were struggling, I could see it. Dad's old phone, Mom's comment about postponing home repairs. Yet, no questions about this additional expense for Angela. Unbelievable, I muttered, throwing my napkin onto the table and standing up. 3 years later, and nothing has changed. What's that supposed to mean? Mom asked, her voice tight. The dam broke. Every thought, every feeling I'd processed in therapy, but never dared express directly, came pouring out in the middle of the Olive Garden. It means you're still sacrificing your own financial security for Angela, while you couldn't even congratulate me properly on my accomplishments. It means you're still acting like her needs automatically outweigh everyone else's. It means you still don't see the pattern that's been happening my entire life. That's not true, Dad said, but his eyes couldn't meet mine. Isn't it? You took my future to give her a better one. You justified it as a loan you've never made any attempt to repay. You dismissed my education as less valuable than hers. And now you're going to drain your retirement for her residency interviews while you suggested I apply for an IT support role instead of taking a job that could actually advance my career. Angela scoffed. Medicine is more demanding than playing with computers all day. The financial investment reflects that. Playing with computers? I laughed bitterly. My playing is about to earn me more in my first year than you'll make in your first 3 years of residency. The difference is I did it without taking opportunities from anyone else. I grabbed my jacket. I'm moving to Seattle next week. I don't expect you to understand or support that decision, because you never have. But I want you to know that whatever success I achieve from this point forward will be in spite of you, not because of you. The drive back to my apartment was a blur of tears and anger, but underneath it, a strange, undeniable relief. For years, I had tried to earn the love and recognition that should have been freely given. In that moment, I finally accepted it would never come, and I no longer needed it. The next morning, I began packing. I made no further attempts to contact them before leaving. My mom called twice, leaving voicemails that completely avoided our confrontation. Just practical questions about the move. My cross-country drive was symbolic. Every mile put more distance between me and that suffocating family dynamic. I stopped at the Grand Canyon, stood at the edge of that vast emptiness, and felt a strange kinship. Something massive had been carved away, leaving destruction Yes, but also a raw, terrifying beauty. When I reached Seattle, with its evergreen surroundings and gleaming skyline, I could finally breathe. This was my fresh start, my chance to define myself on my own terms. Without their shadow, I sent a brief text, arrived safely. My mom responded with a thumbs-up emoji. Dad didn't respond at all. And just like that, the last tether snapped. I was free, adrift in a sea of possibilities. Seattle welcomed me with constant rain and steel-gray skies, matching my emotional state those first few months. My apartment was a tiny studio, but the large window overlooking the street made it feel less confining. Technova was in a renovated warehouse. On my first day, I arrived an hour early, rain-soaked, nervous, clutching coffee like a shield. My manager, Erica, greeted me with a firm handshake. "We expect a lot," she told me, "but we saw something special in your application. Don't be afraid to speak up from day one." Something special. Those words echoed. No one here knew about my community college. No one knew about the family drama. They knew me only by my code, my ideas, my work ethic. A clean slate. I was determined to fill it with achievement. The learning curve was steep. I often stayed late, absorbing new programming languages, security protocols. Some nights, I returned to my empty apartment, wondering if I'd made a mistake. In those moments, the silence of my phone, no calls from family checking on me, was both a wound and a stark reminder of why I had left. But gradually, day by day, I built connections. A JavaScript meetup group became my first social outlet. I met developers from all over Seattle's tech scene, many with similarly unconventional paths. Traditional credentials are less relevant now, explained Miguel, a senior developer at Amazon who taught himself to code while working as a janitor. What matters is what you can build and how quickly you can adapt. His words affirmed my path. Maybe my detour had equipped me with an adaptability my MIT peers lacked. 6 months in, I found a vulnerability in our flagship product, a subtle flaw. Rather than just reporting it, I spent a weekend developing a solution that not only patched the vulnerability, but enhanced the system. When I presented my findings, the room went silent. Then Erica smiled. "This is exactly why we hired you, Dwayne. You don't just see problems, you solve them." That was a turning point. I was assigned to the core development team, given more responsibility, included in strategic planning. The startup culture suited me. Technova valued ideas, not hierarchy. My problem-solving approach, honed by years of making do with limited resources, complemented my colleagues' more traditional backgrounds. Outside of work, I slowly built a social circle. Through the meetup, I met a different Brandon, a hilarious guy who got me into a recreational soccer league. Through soccer, I met Sarah, a graphic designer with bright blue hair and a laugh that cut through. The Seattle drizzle. Sarah and I connected immediately over shared experiences of family estrangement. "Family is who shows up," she told me, "who sees you clearly and loves what they see. Sometimes that's the people who share your DNA, but often it's the ones you find along the way." Her perspective helped me process the sporadic, surface-level texts from my parents. Holidays, birthdays, no meaningful topics. My responses were equally polite and distant. We were strangers who shared memories, but no longer shared lives. Through social media, I watched Angela graduate medical school with honors. My parents posted dozens of photos. The contrast to my own graduation, marked by tension and criticism, wasn't lost on me. But instead of resentment, it confirmed my decision to create distance was necessary. Meanwhile, Technova grew, securing major contracts. My role expanded. My salary increased. After 18 months, I had saved enough for a down payment on a small, modern condo in Fremont. My first real estate purchase, made entirely with my own money. The day I signed the mortgage papers, a surge of pride mixed with vindication washed over me. Without family connections, without the prestigious MIT degree, without any support beyond what I had built myself, I had achieved financial stability and professional success that even they would have to respect. That evening, I hosted a housewarming. Sarah brought homemade cookies. Miguel expensive tequila. My new chosen family filled my condo with laughter and genuine warmth. Looking around, I realized I had created something my parents had never given me: unconditional belonging. Therapy with Dr. Rivera, who specialized in family trauma, helped me continue processing. I learned to separate my worth from their inability to recognize it. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation, she explained. You can release the anger without inviting the same dynamics back into your life. Professional success accelerated. At the 3-year mark, Technova was acquired by a larger tech corporation, a significant payout for early employees with stock options. Overnight, my net worth increased by hundreds of thousands. Financial security I never imagined possible when I was counting quarters for laundry in Lancaster. With this newfound stability came questions about what truly mattered. The corporate environment post-acquisition felt less innovative. I started exploring options for my own security consulting firm. During this transition, occasional texts from my parents hinted at financial struggles. Dad mentioned postponing retirement. Mom referenced picking up extra tutoring. They never directly asked for help, but the implication hovered, a stark contrast to the lavish support they had always provided Angela. Part of me felt a grim satisfaction, the natural consequence of prioritizing one child. But another part recognized this as an opportunity to demonstrate the person I had become, despite their failures. Someone guided by my own moral compass. I didn't respond to their hints. I maintained that polite distance, until the phone call that would force me to confront everything. It came on a Tuesday evening in early December, 3 weeks before Christmas. Dad's name on the screen. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail. But curiosity, or a lingering sense of obligation, made me answer. "Dwayne," he said, his voice sounding older, thinner. "How are you?" "I'm fine," I replied, the automatic response. "Is everything okay?" A pause. "Yes. Well, mostly. Your mother and I were hoping you might consider coming home for Christmas this year." The request caught me completely off guard. In 3 years, they had never invited me for the holidays. Our limited communication existed in a careful limbo. "Why now?" I asked, unable to keep the suspicion out of my voice. He cleared his throat. "It's been a long time. We miss you. And honestly, things haven't been great here." The conversation revealed everything in pieces. Dad had been forced into early retirement when his bank downsized. Mom was teaching, but health issues limited her extra tutoring. Their mortgage was underwater after several refinances, most recently to help Angela with the down payment on her first house in Baltimore, where she'd matched for residency. "We thought she would help with our monthly expenses once she started earning," Dad admitted, his voice tight with embarrassment. "But resident salaries are lower than we realized, and she has her own student loans to manage." The irony. It was almost too perfect. After sacrificing my education fund for Angela's medical school, my parents were facing financial hardship while she prioritized her own needs above theirs, just as they had taught her to do through years of example. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, genuinely meaning it, despite the complicated emotions swirling beneath the surface. "Your mother wants to talk to you," Dad said. Before I could respond, her voice came through. "Dwayne, honey, is that really you?" Something in her tone, a vulnerability I wasn't accustomed to, caught me off guard. "Yes, Mom, it's me. We've missed you so much," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "The house feels empty, especially during the holidays. Angela hasn't been home for Christmas since last year. Her schedule at the hospital is so demanding. We understand, of course, but..." She trailed off. With Angela unavailable, they were turning to their backup child, the one they had always considered secondary. The realization should have angered me, but instead, I felt a strange hollowness. "Mom, I've built a life here in Seattle," I said gently. "I can't just drop everything because Angela is busy." I know, she hurried to say. "You're doing so well, from what we can tell. Your father saw on LinkedIn about your new consulting business. We're proud of you, Dwayne. We really are." Too little, too late, I thought, but didn't say. Instead, I asked, "Have you talked to Angela about your financial situation?" A pause. "She has her own struggles right now. The residency hours are brutal, and she's trying to establish herself. We don't want to burden her. But it's okay to hint about it to me." The words came out sharper than I intended. "That's not what this is about," my mother protested, though we both knew it wasn't entirely true. "We genuinely want to see you. To try and, I don't know, bridge this gap." After ending the call with a non-committal promise to think about it, I stared out at the Seattle skyline. The familiar mix of resentment and longing washed over me. Anger at their continued pattern of favoritism, coupled with that persistent, childlike desire to believe they might finally see me clearly. That evening, I told Sarah everything. "What are you thinking?" she asked, her question open, inviting honest reflection. Part of me wants to tell them to figure it out themselves, I admitted. They made their choices. But another part wonders if this might be a chance for a real conversation, for them to finally understand the impact of what they did. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. Just remember that closure doesn't always come from other people acknowledging what they did wrong. Sometimes it comes from you deciding it doesn't control you anymore. Her words stayed with me. Brandon joined the discussion during our weekend hike. The key is boundaries, he emphasized. You can see them without falling back into old patterns, but only if you're doing it for the right reasons. Not because you're still seeking their approval. My decision crystallized when I saw a social media post from Angela. Photos of her enjoying a European vacation with her med school friends. It had been posted just days after my parents' call about their financial difficulties. Much needed break before the holiday hospital shifts. The caption read, "Treat yourself, #DrLife." Curiosity drove me to dig deeper. Christmas markets in Munich, a luxury hotel in Prague, skiing in the Alps. All while my parents worried about their mortgage. A quick calculation suggested the trip had cost thousands. Money that could have helped the very parents who had sacrificed so much for her education. The contrast was stark. Further investigation revealed my parents had remortgaged their home just 18 months earlier to give Angela nearly $50,000 for a down payment on her Baltimore townhouse. This was after draining their retirement accounts for her medical education. The pattern was agonizingly clear. They had consistently compromised their own financial security to support Angela's lifestyle choices, while expecting me to fend for myself. Now that their resources were depleted and Angela was focused on her own priorities, they were turning to me, the child they had deemed less worthy of investment. After several days, I made my decision. I would go to Pennsylvania for Christmas, but on my own terms. I booked a flight to Harrisburg and reserved a hotel room in Lancaster. Not staying at their house. That physical boundary felt important. A clear signal that while I was open to conversation, I wasn't simply sliding back into my old role. As I packed, I felt a strange mix of dread and something like hope. Not hope that they would suddenly transform into the supportive figures I had always longed for, but hope that I had transformed enough to face them without being diminished by their perception of me. The night before my flight, watching Seattle's holiday lights twinkle across the water, I knew this. Whatever happened, I would return to this city, to the life I had built with my own hands, to people who valued me for exactly who I was. That knowledge gave me a foundation my younger self never possessed. The flight felt like traveling backward in time. As the plane descended, memories surfaced. Childhood Christmases, family dinners. Moments of both belonging and exclusion. I rented a car, another small, significant boundary. The drive from the airport took me past familiar landmarks that now felt foreign. My old mall, the park where I learned to ride my bike, the library where I discovered programming. My hotel was downtown, a renovated historic building. After checking in, I texted my parents. I'd be by that evening. The neighborhood looked the same. Modest homes, neat yards, holiday decorations. But as I pulled into my childhood driveway, I saw signs of neglect. Peeling paint around the windows, cracks in the front steps, landscaping that used to be my mom's pride, now overgrown. My mom opened the door before I could knock, her face lighting up with joy and anxiety. She had aged more than 3 years warranted. New lines, gray hair. "Dwayne," she breathed. Reaching for a hug, I returned somewhat stiffly. "You look so different." She wasn't wrong. The lanky, uncertain young man was gone, replaced by someone more confident, more fit from soccer, more polished. Success and self-assurance had transformed me, clearly surprising her. My father appeared, extending a hand for a handshake that felt oddly formal. "Good to see you, son," he said, his voice gruff with suppressed emotion. "Thanks for coming." The house interior showed more signs of financial strain. Shabby furniture, an outdated TV, small repairs left undone. The Christmas tree seemed sparse compared to the elaborate displays of my youth, though they had placed the same familiar ornaments on its branches, including the ones I'd made as a child. Conversation was awkward at first. Safe topics: my flight, Seattle weather, changes in Lancaster. We carefully avoided Angela, finances, the past conflicts that hung between us like an invisible barrier. Over dinner, a lasagna my mom had prepared, it used to be my favorite. They asked cautious questions about my work. I found myself explaining cloud security protocols and the basics of my consulting business to parents who had once dismissed computers as a hobby. So, these companies pay you to find weaknesses in their systems? Dad asked, genuine interest in his voice. Essentially, yes, I replied. I identify vulnerabilities before malicious hackers can exploit them, then develop solutions. And this pays well. He couldn't quite hide the surprise. I met his gaze directly. Very well. My billing rate starts at $300 an hour for consulting services, with project fees often running into six figures. Their expressions, a mixture of shock, pride, and perhaps regret, told me everything their words couldn't. They had never imagined this level of success for me, especially without the prestigious education they had prioritized for Angela. As the evening progressed, I noticed photos of Angela prominently displayed throughout the house. Her med school graduation, white coat ceremony, various achievements. My few photos were older, from high school. Nothing documenting my adult accomplishments. The observation stung, but also reinforced why I had left. Even in my absence, the imbalance persisted. Angela remained the child whose achievements were celebrated and displayed, while mine went unacknowledged. Christmas Eve brought extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in years. Curious glances, careful questions. Seattle must be exciting, my Aunt Judy commented. We always knew you were smart, but starting your own business already? That's impressive. Unlike some fields, tech rewards results more than credentials, I replied. The subtle reference to Angela's path wasn't lost on my parents, who exchanged glances across the table. The elephant in the room became a giant. Then my mom's phone chimed. Her face fell. Angela won't be joining us tomorrow, she announced. There's been a scheduling change at the hospital, and she's needed for an important case. The excuse sounded hollow, especially given Angela's European vacation photos. But my parents nodded in resigned acceptance, clearly accustomed to her absences. Such important work she's doing, Dad added, as if to justify her choice to the family. Saving lives comes first. I bit my tongue, resisting the urge to point out Angela's Instagram story from that morning showed her brunching with friends in Baltimore, not working a hospital shift. Some patterns never changed. After the relatives left, the house fell into an uncomfortable silence. The three of us sat in the living room, Christmas tree lights twinkling. The weight of unspoken words became unbearable. Why did you really want me to come home? I finally asked, breaking the facade of normalcy we'd maintained. My parents exchanged glances. Dad cleared his throat. Because you're our son, and we've missed you. For 3 years, you barely reached out, I pointed out. Occasional texts. No real attempts to visit or understand my life. What changed? The direct question hung in the air. My mom looked down at her hands, twisting her wedding ring. We've realized some things, Dad finally said, his voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. About our choices. About how we treated you compared to Angela. And it took 3 years of me being gone to realize that. I kept my tone even. Not accusatory, but not letting them off the hook. It took seeing the consequences, my mother admitted quietly. She's not like you, Dwayne. She takes and takes, and we gave and gave because we thought that's what parents should do. But she doesn't. She trailed off. She doesn't give back. I finished for her. She doesn't consider your needs the way you've always considered hers. My father's eyes filled with tears. I had never seen him cry. I was wrong, he said, the words clearly difficult. About so many things. About what success looks like. About what makes a person valuable. That admission cracked something open in the room. A door to honesty that had been sealed shut my entire life. You took my future, I said simply. You took money specifically set aside for me and gave it to Angela because you believed her dreams mattered more than mine. Do you understand what that communicated to me? My mother wiped tears from her cheeks. That you mattered less. That we valued you less. That straightforward acknowledgement, something they had always denied or minimized, hit me with unexpected force. For years, I had just wanted them to admit the truth. I had to rebuild my entire life from scratch, I continued. I had to create opportunities for myself that you should have helped provide, the way you did for Angela. And the irony is that I've ended up more financially stable than both of you and Angela combined. My father nodded slowly. You've always been resourceful, independent. We took advantage of that, telling ourselves you would be fine regardless. It was easier than acknowledging we were being unfair. The conversation continued late into the night. Painful, honest, occasionally heated, but ultimately more genuine than any interaction we had ever had. They detailed their financial woes. Multiple home equity loans for Angela's education and lifestyle. Credit card debt. Retirement accounts drained. We kept expecting her to step up once she was established, my mother explained, to help us the way we helped her. But there's always another expense. Another reason why she can't contribute. You taught her that, I pointed out, not unkindly. You taught her that her needs automatically outweigh everyone else's. Why would she suddenly develop consideration she was never expected to show? My father rubbed his face wearily. You're right. We created this situation. All of it. Including losing our relationship with you. As Christmas morning dawned, we exchanged modest gifts. A handmade scarf from my mom, a book about tech entrepreneurs from my dad, a Seattle-themed gift basket from me. The presents were less important than the new atmosphere between us. Tentative, fragile, but more honest than ever. I need you both to understand something, I said, as we sat with coffee after breakfast. I didn't come back to bail you out financially. I can't be the solution to problems created by the same pattern that hurt me. They nodded. Disappointment visible, but acceptance, too. But I do want to help you develop a realistic financial plan, I continued. One that includes clear boundaries with Angela and prioritizes your retirement security. Relief washed over their faces. Not the quick fix they might have secretly hoped for, but a sustainable kind of support. And I'm willing to work on our relationship, I said. But it has to be different than before. Equal, respectful of my choices and path, with acknowledgement of the past rather than pretending it didn't happen. We want that, too, my mother said softly. We're proud of the man you've become, Dwayne. We just wish we could take credit for more of it. You can take credit for teaching me resilience, I replied after a moment. I learned to rely on myself because I had to. That served me well, even if the lesson was painful. Before leaving Lancaster, I helped them create a spreadsheet. Income, expenses, debts. I showed them how to negotiate with creditors, how to develop a budget. Most importantly, I helped them draft an email to Angela, explaining that they could no longer provide financial support and, in fact, needed her to begin repaying some of what they had invested in her education. The response from Angela came while I was still there. Indignant, self-justifying, accusing them of favoring me suddenly, after years of prioritizing her. The irony wasn't lost on any of us. She'll adjust, I told my parents as they struggled with guilt over setting this boundary. Just like I had to adjust when you couldn't support my education. The difference is, she's had advantages I never did. And she's an adult now, not a teenager. As I prepared to return to Seattle, our goodbyes were different than I anticipated. No dramatic reconciliation. No promises that everything would be perfect. Instead, there was something more valuable. Mutual respect and a commitment to continue the honest dialogue we had begun. We'll do better, my father said, hugging me at the airport. Not just with money, but with being the parents you deserved all along. And I'll try to call more often, I promised. Not because I'm obligated, but because I choose to. The flight back to Seattle felt lighter, as if I had left behind baggage I hadn't realized I was still carrying. Sarah and Brandon met me at the airport. Their familiar faces, a reminder of the life I had built for myself. A life that was no longer defined by what my family had failed to give me, but by what I had created on my own terms. As the new year approached, I hosted a small gathering in my condo. Standing on my balcony, overlooking the city lights, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here, from a betrayed and wounded young man to someone capable of confronting the past without being consumed by it. My parents and I continued our tentative reconciliation through regular phone calls and more honest communication than we had ever managed before. They reported that Angela had reacted poorly to their financial boundaries at first, but was slowly adjusting. Our family would never be what I had once wished for as a child, but perhaps it could become something authentic and respectful. The greatest lesson I learned? True worth isn't determined by others' assessment of your value. It's built through resilience in the face of betrayal, through creating success on your own terms, and through the courage to confront painful truths rather than avoiding them. Life doesn't always give us the support we deserve, but it gives us opportunities to become stronger than we ever imagined possible. My parents' betrayal had forced me to forge my own path, And that path had led to a life more fulfilling than the one that might have been handed to me. So, tell me, have you ever had to rebuild your life after someone you trusted let you down? What did you learn? Drop a comment below. Your story might just be the light someone else needs to see.